Right, we are live. Hello,
Yes. Hello.
episode
Hey.
198.
198. We're creeping towards 200.
We
This is
are
craziness.
creeping. We're a week away, so
I know.
we've got to figure out what to do next Wednesday when it's actually episode 200.
I don't know. I hope Doc Brown doesn't magically arrive again.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Back in episode 88 for anybody watching who hasn't stuck around since then.
Yeah, we even did custom graphics and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So Emily, you are not Scott Cirkland.
I am not.
No. So tell us who you are real quick.
I am an Illustrator graphic designer with just doing my thing. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Just Illustrator graphic designer in Idaho, living life.
Okay, you ready for an art check?
Nice. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Josh, what have you gotten done in the last 48 hours?
All right. Not quite what I was hoping. So I probably am where I should have been at the last art check. And for those of you who are newly joining us or were watching yesterday, and we're not yesterday, but Monday, and we're like, where is Josh? I've been dealing with a tide of overtime for about a week and a half where I work as an art director. And it's a big opportunity for the business. And so it's like one of those cases of when you work in creative, you sometimes have to bite the bullet for the team and kind of show up. But that also meant a total decrease in pretty much everything outside of my job. So I've been playing catch up, but I did manage to get to finish the lettering on this. So I'll be scanning this and doing all that stuff very shortly. But I managed to finish that page. So I'm kind of back on track, but a little behind. I don't know if that makes sense.
Cool. For me, I started a show with Jim Lujan. Yeah. And so we did our second episode last night. And then I've also just been super slammed, probably not as slammed as Josh, but I've got kind of this that I'm working on. I'm doing a t-shirt design for one of Jim's shows that he did. And then I feel like I should have a longer list than that, but I don't. So I have done a bunch of the kind of behind the scenes stuff and things like that. Gotten a few more rejections and one of these went from finalist to selection. So I'm actually going to be screened.
Nice.
That's so cool.
Thanks. Yeah. So Emily, how about you?
I drew yesterday.
Woo!
Yeah, I don't have it all fancy like you guys, but I've been working on, my big project is trying to create a bunch of backlog stuff so that I don't have to draw and then immediately post. So I'm doing stuff like Greek mythology illustrations. And this is what I worked on right now. It looks really bad when I'm holding it up here. But that one's
What kind of funky screen protector do you have on that looks rainbow?
I bought it off of some guy, so who knows?
Okay.
But yeah. But I have a bunch of sketches that I'm working on, and I have Nyx and Athena 95% done, and then who knows how many more left because I haven't even finished sketching all of them. So
nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
And what's that for? What are you doing that for?
Just because why not? Okay. I don't know. I just figure I am in the process of trying to figure out what I'm doing. And I want to start doing a little bit more geeky stuff. I don't know, just like be able to draw people's like D&D characters or stuff like that. And like looking through my Instagram, it does not reflect that I want to do those things.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, I'll just start doing some things that I think are fun and kind of geeky. And so I really liked Greek mythology as a kid. So I was just like, I'll just do a ton of characters from that and draw my own way and do a little backstory of like, in case they haven't heard of this god or goddess, like what they are and what they do, basically.
Cool.
Nice.
That's awesome. Great. Okay. Josh, challenges.
Yeah, so I guess TJ in the chats, we already kind of pulled it up, but was mentioning working like 12-hour days, 6 days a week since the second, and I relate. That's kind of where I've been at for the last like week and a half, and it's a little rough, especially when it starts carving into your weekends. Like that's a little tough. But once again, I feel like it's like preaching to the choir. Like anybody who works in animation or storyboarding or anything like that, it's like I've still been pulling short shifts comparatively to a lot of industries. So but yeah, so that's been a big challenge, a good challenge. One thing I've learned from doing this for quite a number of years is like when you're in like a director or an executive position and like fires come up, like they actually can create opportunity. And so like you always, weirdly enough, have to be like looking for the silver lining. Because a lot of positive change in organizations and in teams and stuff happens kind of in the fire, and so that's something I'm getting better at kind of embracing and leaning into rather than avoiding.
Right.
Which is, I think, like one of those things of like first time managers, you kind of run from it, and then the longer you're at it, the more you're just like, oh, I'll lean into this because I know good will come from it. So yeah, that's been a massive challenge, just trying to like logistically keep everything running with the limited window we have. And Corey and I talk about that all the time, but it's like there's always this challenge of a window when you're working on personal work that isn't necessarily for income. It's like the big vision stuff. And that stuff, it's hard to create those windows when the short term like payoff stuff like kind of creeps in and takes over. So that's been my challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, still managed to do practice with the band. I've still managed to kind of put in about 30 minutes a day minimum on my comic. And then before you know it, it's like it does start showing results because I finished the page. So now I'm on to like, I think 2 more and the book's done. So
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. But still challenging. Yeah. But anyhow, what about you, Corey? What were your challenges? It sounds kind of similar.
Yeah, a lot of mine are. I'm just exhausted. Like I'm getting home.
Yeah.
I'm getting home, and I just crash for like an hour. There's been so that's been kind of hard. And then Josh, you and I used to do 3 shows a week, and then we cut back to 2 shows a week, and now I'm back up to 3 shows a week. And I was actually talking to somebody else, and they want to do their show. And I'm really excited about it. So I might actually be doing 4 shows a week.
Wow, nice.
But my 4th show will happen during the day, so that'll be a little bit better. And I might have like a crew. So that would be less of me driving everything and just me showing up and doing stuff. So that could be easier. I don't know, but nothing specific. And Frank wants to do a show too. So there's 17 shows a week or something. I can't remember. But anyway, so yeah, nothing really. Just random stuff that I need to get over and get going on things. But I've been writing a lot, and I'm trying to figure out, I think I have a pretty good story. the kernel of a story, but I don't have like it like plotted.
Hmm.
And so I've got several scenes and several characters and a basic idea, but I don't know where it's going. And so that's been kind of a challenge to like figure out like how to end this thing. Cause the way that I write, I've got to figure out how it ends before I know how it starts and where it goes from there. And so I've got to kind of work that out. But I think it's not going to be a super depressing one where the hero dies in the end. So that'll be new for me.
I'm mystified by this idea of a non-depressing story. It's so outside of my wheelhouse.
It is. I will say it does take place after what I'm calling the super AI consumption wars, where all the AI start eating each other, and then there's just 4 left that rule the world, and everybody started wearing wearable tech, and so the human race is just divided up into 4 tribes of cyber zombies that are controlled by these super AI.
Nice.
So I wouldn't
total
say it's
dystopian future.
Right. I wouldn't say it's upbeat. But
It's so you.
So it's your more upbeat cyberpunk dystopian story.
Right. So, but like a happy one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway,
think of the road and then put it in a cyber era and then try to kind of picture it being a little happy when they're being chased by cannibals.
Oh, man. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what my problem is. I'm actually a really upbeat guy, but I just make really depressing, weird stuff.
You know what? I've noticed this with cartoonists in general. Like most of the guys that I've met in the NCS that are like New Yorker guys and do those like 1-panel strips that are super funny are like very like serious demeanor type people. And then they have this like insanely goofy humor,
right?
Like in their art. And then it's similar, like a lot of the more like very serious cartoonists, like in their content, are like super goofy in person. It's an interesting thing.
That's funny.
I wonder if it's because it's our darker selves coming out in our art.
I read something somewhere that said like be boring in real life so you can be nuts on the page.
That's great advice.
That's pretty good.
I feel like that applies. So Emily, challenges, and I don't know if we should maybe skip this section for you since this is like the entire episode.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah.
We'll come back to your challenges.
Jan made a really good comment, and hey, Jan, all the way from Spain.
Yes.
So it's the like Risk, the board game, but without where the human players, without human players, and the pawns are the humans.
Yes, and the only people that aren't controlled by the AI are a roving motorcycle gang that refuses to take on tech.
Ooh,
so
I like it.
So anyway.
It's a good window to draw some motorcycle stuff, though, because I always feel like that would be a good thing for you to have in your work, like content-wise, since it's an interest,
Yeah, and I've got a little bit of it, but I haven't really played with it as much as I'm going to for this project. So
love it. So,
Josh, what are your plans?
So my plans right now are to work out what those last 2 pages are. I think the interior page with like the disclaimer of like none of this is meant to represent people from real life and all that, and some of the legalese and all that like shouldn't be bad, except that I want everything on the interior, including the legal copy, to all be hand lettered. Because why not? Like just to keep it all consistent, like it's got to look good. So my goal is to have those at least like comped out, but I'm hoping to kind of have them completed because they shouldn't be too difficult. And then the other thing is just like going to be, because the story like touches on suicide and issues like that, I do want to have like a little disclaimer for like with the hotline, and stuff, so people don't think I'm like endorsing suicide. Because it deals with like a heavy topics, and I don't want somebody to like finish the book, and so I'm thinking to bookend it. It might have that as well.
That's good.
And then it's on to the covers and stuff. So cool. It should be a fun weekend. On a side note, because I do think this is creative, is like I'm modding a guitar that's complicated. Like the last one I modded was not as complicated because it was mostly stock pots, which is all the electronics. But this one's a little more complicated because it's an irregular body shape, and so the electronic components don't fit within the shape. So I actually have to modify the guts of the body of the guitar, like sand it a little thinner so the pots will like meet up. Anyhow, totally long-winded way of saying that's a project that I'm going to be working on this weekend. And then I'm hoping to also make a little bit more progress on our mixing of our album too. So that's kind of where I hope to be by like Tuesday. Cool. As well as just hopefully be sane and not exhausted from work. So yeah.
Good.
What about you? Plans?
Let's see. So before Monday, I'm going to finish this t-shirt design. I am going to figure out the ending of this story. I also have to figure out like the mechanics, like the rules. I'm trying to. I think I have to figure out how these AI can be killed, and so I'm researching like kernels in operating systems and trying to figure out and understand how that works. And so there'll be a bit of research there. And then I also have to figure out if there are parts on a motorcycle that would be destroyed if a EMP went off that would cause them not to function. And so there's a few story plot holes that I'm trying to close before I figure out the story. And then
question about the story too. Do you have like an arc worked out already, like just a rough arc, like hero's journey, or what direction you're going to go with like the overall arc?
Almost, but
Okay.
that's kind of what I mean by like the ending. I've got to figure out where it's going before I kind of know where to start. Also, I did the normal thing that I normally do where I kind of mapped out like this like nine movie long epic thing, world building craziness. And so I've got to shave it down to something that I can probably complete in 6 months.
Are you going to animate it?
Yeah, it's going to be more like 30. It'll be long for me because I'm going to try to go for like a 30-minute animation. So, but my story right now is like significantly longer than 30 minutes. It's like Lord of the Rings right now. So I've got to get it down to like, an episode of television. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
don't Silmarillion it, just do the sections and tell a short story within that world,
Right. And that's the thing is I just have to know some of the tech and stuff because it takes place. I need to understand enough of that to make it believable. I don't need to understand enough of it to like know how to do it or explain it to everybody.
Got it.
I don't want anybody to be like, that wouldn't work. That doesn't make any sense. So, because I hate that explanation and stuff like this where it's like, it's technology. You won't understand it. I'm like, there are a lot of really smart people out there and they will understand this. So, and that's kind of my target audience is like people who are futurists and understand programming and stuff. So, so I'll figure that out. I'll get the story mapped out and I will animate something. I've got a character that I've got illustrated that I intend to animate on a bike. And so I'll probably have that done by then. So,
nice. And is it going to have dialogue too? Like full out? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and that's the other thing that I was planning on doing is I think in my mind I've come up with a theory where I can halfway automate the lip sync to the audio track, where if I turn the decibels of the audio track into a numerical value and then I pick whip the Y position of the mouth to the decibel level, I think when it gets louder, the mouth will open. So I want to try to
automate it.
How that works. Yeah. So if I can automate it, that would be way better. So
That's super
That would be
cool.
amazing. Yeah.
so we'll see.
Cool. Well, like, if it were like a year and a half ago and you were saying, I'm going to do a 30-minute movie in like 6 months, I'd be like, ha. But now it's like with the speed that you've acquired with it, I think that's actually doable. Adding voice syncing is going to be interesting, but I think it's possible.
Yeah. And I'm just going to steal, Wood's like 22 panels and just cut away a lot.
Oh yeah.
So
Why not, man? If Funimation could do it, like there's so many companies throughout history that have used like limited animation, including like most TV shows now. So why not?
Yeah, and it'll be straight up an episode of like He-Man or Hanna-Barbera where only mouths moves or whatever. But I don't know. It'll be drawn well. That's what I can promise. I don't know about that, but we'll see. So I'm gonna get I don't know, whatever I just listed. Get that guy animated. Test out mouth syncing. I might start posting some of my progress. Also, I'm trying to teach myself. What is this program called? Affinity Designer.
I got that on the iPad.
Yeah, we should talk about that because
Yeah.
I am so slow. I'm not used to being this slow. Just because I'm not used to all the gestures and everything. But I think I like it a lot. I just got to get faster at it. So
Nice.
yeah. So Emily, what are your plans in the next 48 hours?
Draw again. Definitely draw again. That's like my goals, really. Is like I just need to draw again. Yeah.
All right.
That's really all it is.
Let's jump into the topic. I'm gonna do this really fast, and then when we come back, we'll jump into our topic. Today's topic is Guminelly. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. You said yeah, like I don't care how you say it, old man.
No, it's my last name. Everybody messes that up, and nobody can really mess up Guminelly. So,
gotcha.
There we go.
Okay, so I want to give you a little history of why Emily is on the show, and where we're all coming from. So Emily has had the misfortune of being my TA for it seems like a significant portion of time.
It was a while. Yeah.
How long? Like a couple of years?
I don't know if it probably was a couple years or a little bit less, but it was definitely more than a year. I don't know.
Okay.
It all blurred together.
Right. And so more than a year in college seems like a really long time.
Yeah.
But we go back a little further than that. You were in a student-run advertising agency. And back then I was really frustrated with you because you would start and give up on, I seemed like about 20 different side projects. You're like, I'm going to do a thing. And you do like 2 parts of it. And then like, I'd never see anything again. And then for the longest time, your illustration, and I can say this because I really like where you are.
I think I know what you're going to say anyways.
I think I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm curious on what you think I'm going to say. I want to know.
I think you're going to say that the thin black strokes or just the thin strokes outside of this stuff. Yeah. Because I did that and you told me not to.
It looked terrible. It looked really bad. And I told you over and over and over again. And I think you thought I was trying to make you like me. And you're like, I don't want my stuff to look like your stuff. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to tell you it looks bad. Anyway, and so then I don't know what happened. And this is where I'm kind of curious. Then all of a sudden, like a light switch flipped on and you lit on fire and you like leveled up several levels. You were producing stuff all the time and your stuff looks great now. And you got really fast to the point where just to kind of prove a point to one of our classes, you were like, this is a lot of work. I'm just going to make a fully colored, digitally painted children's book page every day this month. And that worked like the entire class. And then recently you were like, I haven't drawn in a long time. And I was like, you have to come on the show. So that is where we are today. So I want to know, and we can kind of, I don't know how we want to tackle this, Josh, but I want to know what was going on when you were in this like hyper productive mode. And I want to know what's going on now that you are struggling to produce something. And what I think we're going to find is that in between those kind of, like neuron type things where it's like, this is 100% of my waking time versus I never do this ever. In between those is like a sweet spot where you're producing at like a sustainable level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why did you light on fire? Like what happened in your life where you were like all of a sudden like just pumping out illustrations like there was no tomorrow?
I'm competitive. And so like knowing that I was doing it for a competition, or at least that I could at least enter into a competition, or like with things like Inktober where it's like being compared immediately to other people's stuff because we're all following the same prompt, that really motivates me. But also I know that it's going to be over after 30 days. And so there's a little bit of that. And then also like when I was doing fully illustrated, full color with background illustrations for whatever it was, 24 days straight, I didn't have a job like other than the TA job. And that was in the morning. So I could spend 3 to 6 hours on something. And yeah, I mean, it paid off because I was really scared of using backgrounds before. And now I integrate them just when I need it, But, and also like those challenges for like, this is a learning space. This is where if I don't take this time to learn all of this now, then I'm not really I don't know if I'm going to commit in the future. So I'll just do it. And everybody's watching me, so I have to do it. But now my schedule is not that great. And everything in my day happens from like 1 to 6. And in the mornings, I just want to chill out. And in the evenings, I go to the gym and then I'm tired. So there's like only time for small stuff if I'm even up for it. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what's going on.
So your challenge that you're finding is that as you're moving into a more adult schedule, you don't necessarily have 6 to 8 hours a day in a chunk.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So this is fascinating. Okay. So a couple questions. One, you're still in school?
Kind of. I'm like
Kinda?
taking one class a semester. So like I'm taking an online class this semester. Okay. And I think I'm only going to take one class again next semester and then I might graduate. So
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're almost done with school.
Yeah.
So you're ramping up the work, like so you're starting to work somewhere and that's eating up what, like 8 hours a day or?
No, it's like 20 hours a week. It's just like inconvenient times in the day. If it was like in the morning, I think it'd be a really different story because my whole day would be ahead of me when I get home. Okay. But when I get home, I go to the gym and then it's like 9 o'clock. And so after that point, like I have to make dinner and then my husband comes home and then we have like an hour together. So it's just like super weird. When do I do anything other than like rest or work? So.
Okay. This is fascinating. Okay. And you were saying you perform best. You're kind of competitive, which is interesting because that will touch on too, because that can be a boost or a boon depending on how you use that.
I agree.
Interesting. Okay. Corey, I want to go further, but I don't want to jump to the end. So keep pacing this.
Yeah. So anyway, so my question is, you've mentioned a schedule, and you mentioned competition. you mentioned other people watching you, and you mentioned time. So really the only thing that's changed is that you feel like your schedule isn't as like the time portion of that. You feel like your schedule is different, right?
Yeah.
Break down for me when you were doing the ad agency and full-time school and TA. Why did that feel like you had more time?
Competition.
Okay.
Because the Visual Society was like they had frequent competitions, and I knew that if I entered, I could win something. And so that motivated me. But there was honestly, there was a point where I was working there where I was like, I've been making stuff at work all day. I don't want to make stuff when I come home.
Mhm.
And it's funny that you remember stuff that I forgot about working there, because I don't remember all the stuff that I did, but at least I didn't tie it to the same timeline or something. But
It was like you'd show up on a Tuesday and I'd be like, you need to do something or you're never going to get better. And you're like, yeah, I'm really excited because I just started doing this. And then I'd see you again on a Thursday. I'm like, how's that going? You're like, oh, I did it twice and then I'm done.
I don't even remember this.
In 2 semesters, that happened like 8 or 9 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, then that might have stopped when I did my senior project, because I had to dedicate a lot of time to that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Your senior project. So in your senior project, you illustrated a card game. So you illustrated all the characters in a card game. And that was where I was critiquing your work a lot. And you finally listened to me and then kind of found your own style.
I didn't yet, because that one had lines. It had lines on the outside.
I just remember disliking it for most of the semester.
But I remember, well, yeah, that's right. You told me halfway through that you liked it, even though I kept
eventually you started using line weight.
Yeah. And I colored the lines.
Right.
I did more stuff.
Right.
But yeah, that was totally I flipped a switch, because I had done all that. I was really proud of it. I was really excited to start another project. And then I had burnout for months and months and months. So then I started trying to figure out how to do stuff sustainably,
mm-hmm.
or at least just listen to myself and be like, if you hate this, you can stop, but you need to start, you need to start stuff until you find something that you don't hate again. And so, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have a few questions. These are just kind of questions, but one is what's your end goal with art, in general?
Good question.
Yeah.
Where do you want to head?
So freelance, but I want to have a shop where I have a big enough following that I can basically just work out of home, fulfilling orders and creating content for that. And I also would want to do, of course, freelance stuff. It'd be so cool to work on card game or board game projects. Those are
mm-hmm.
obviously really specific, but things that I think would be super fun to do. And just sell, maybe make my own games or stuff like that, but mostly just make stuff and then do freelance stuff, whatever freelance stuff comes my way.
Okay. So
I think you have an interesting thing, because you're within several niches and you're inside of those. So you're really into video games and you're really into board games.
Yeah.
And you've got the illustration going for you. And
mm-hmm.
so you're not going to be faking it when you're seeing that. When you say that you want to do people's D&D characters, you would be super excited to get paid to do that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be I got to take a commission, right? So point that out. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
So, okay. So this is where I'm going to get to the crux of those questions, basically. Like, so you're motivated by competition, right?
Yeah.
You're motivated by like a potential prize kind of at the end of the rainbow or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're gradually getting close to school ending, and you're having minimal output working 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
So just a few things. Like, one is outside of school, usually that work becomes like 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And what you're describing, like as just a goal, right, requires like a constant output and an improvement in portfolio, right? And building that kind of base to be able to
Yeah.
kind of create like an income. And
Yeah.
so the thing that I would say, this is just something to consider, and we'll talk about, like, I'm sure Corey's going to get into this more too, but we'll talk about like achievability of it now. But like the lack of time is always going to be a struggle, and it only gets worse outside of school.
Yeah.
I
believe that.
I don't think you actually have less time. I think
No.
Yeah.
I think it
I
just
think we both heard the clue at the
Yeah.
beginning of this whole thing, because you said in the mornings I like to chill.
Yeah.
And
No,
to
that's
me, I'm like,
exactly
there's your
what it is.
window.
Yeah, it is. It's like, well, yeah. My husband and I just like just want whenever we're home, we just want to play video games together. And so
Yeah, no. It's and
that's
and
all I
that's
want to
important.
do.
It's important to cultivate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's the thing to kind of just keep in mind. Like, one
Yeah.
is like, you are in a contest because you're in a contest for work in visual
Yeah.
art, and it's always a contest, and it's a bigger contest, and it's a bigger pool. And if you're not doing it, this is just a reality thing, but it's like, if you're not doing output, there's somebody your age in your exact situation who's doing the output.
Yeah, totally.
So the competition's there. So if that motivates you, like, realize it's there whether you want to pay attention to it or not. And when you're taking money for art, you're competing with James Jean. You're competing with like pros like out there that have been doing it for 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
So that's not to like, dissuade you. It's to just kind of let you know, like, there is a competition. You're in it, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
I think you're saying that because she identified competition as one of her major motivators. Because I am very competitive as well.
Yeah.
Have you tried competing with yourself? I know that sounds really stupid, but with me, what I've found is that competition with people on the internet becomes just a weird thing, because like, I don't really have the ability to gauge whether I'm winning or not.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bigger pool of contestants, like, meaning, like, if I'm competing with like classmates, I was super competitive. Like, by the way, I relate like 110% to what you're describing, because that was one of my main motivating factors as an artist in school. I was competitive with all my classmates, and I'd always want to, like, when we hung our work, I wanted mine to be at least in the top 2, if not the best. And so that would motivate me to like do, all-nighters and work extra hard, because I just wanted that, self-fulfillment. But it does kind of become problematic when you're out of school, because then, like, I'm competing with Chris Ware, and I'm never going to be Chris Ware. Like, I can try, but it's like my heroes, even when I get to the level of some of my heroes, there's a new hero. There's somebody who's better every time.
Yeah.
And so that can be demotivating, because it's like you can kind of never, like, if it's not achievable, it becomes less fun of a competition.
Yes, totally. Because like I started following the, what is it called? Character Design Challenge. It's like a thing on Facebook. It's super cool. But every time I'm like, yeah, of course there's people on there that are better than me. Like, it's the internet,
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel that.
But what's cool is like what Corey's describing, like a way of reframing it to where it's healthier, is literally competing with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, trying to make something better than the last thing you made. But one thing I just am noting, like, in this whole thing is kind of more of like just the idea of if your end like you got to keep that end goal that you described to us in mind, because if you lose track with your end goal, and I graduated with plenty of people who like did amazing things. Like one of them was, you know, head of story on like Zootopia. You know, he was in my graduating class.
Cool.
You know, like a lot of people who did excellent things, but I also knew plenty of people who like 5 years after working on a BFA in illustration, like were managing restaurants or like doing something like entirely different from art. And we're like, yeah. And they'd have the same story like every year. Like, yeah, I'm going to get to my sketchbook. It's just finding the time.
Yeah.
So the time thing is a thing that I guess maybe Corey can kind of get into a little more with me, but the time thing is like one of those games where if you're looking for windows of time to appear, they're just not going to appear. In fact, they're going to shrink the further you get from school. Like those windows will deplete. You know, if you add kids into the equation, the window depletes significantly, right?
Yeah.
And so,
but you can gamify it though.
Exactly.
So one of the things, because like I could and have in slumps, I could play hundreds of hours of video games. Like I've got Rocket League, you know, I've got Just Cause, I've got all those games on the same computer that I'm making art on. Mm-hmm. And so at any given time, I can literally just Alt Tab and grab a controller and I'm done for the night, right? That's me for another 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And so, but one thing you can do is you can use the numbing behavior because a lot of times video games and entertainment, it's good because it's relaxing, but if you're using it to avoid doing what you feel like you should be doing, it's numbing behavior. It's the same type of thing as drug abuse and alcohol and random illicit sex. Like it's you know, in the right context, you know, pharmaceuticals work really well and everything like that. They're great, right? When abused, you're using that to avoid, to run, to numb. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with video games. I like video games, but when video games are used to avoid what you feel like you're called to do, they're not a happy fictional escape. They're you hiding. And you can tell, because this is a war of art thing, you can tell whether or not the behavior that you're doing is a numbing behavior by how empty you feel afterwards, right? If you play 6 hours, and you like the creepy, scary video games, but if you play like 6 hours of games, right? And then at the end of it, you're like, man, I really needed that. That was great. I feel totally fulfilled, right? Good for you. That's great. That's probably not going to happen every time you do it. Most of the time, especially if you do it before you do your work for the day, you're gonna close that game and you're gonna feel empty, and you'll beat yourself up a little bit like you wasted time. Yeah. So reverse that, okay? And it's like you are not going to play video games instead of eat, or play video games instead of go to your job where you get paid, right? You would never miss a shift at work because you're just really enjoying a game that you're playing, right?
Right.
You have to treat your side work the same way. It's a non-negotiable, right? You turn pro on your side work. You turn pro on your art, which means that you show up at a specific time, no matter how you feel, no matter whether you're sick, no matter whether you want to be there or not. And you do the work and you put in the time, and then you can reward yourself afterwards. And so there's no gym, there's no video games, there's no whatever other avoidance behaviors you're doing until you get your work done. And then you've got the day. You can do whatever you want. So I used to get up at 4:45 in the morning to work on my comic, right?
Oh,
and you know that I now don't get up because I talk about this in class. But that was the only time that with my kid and my wife and my job and everything else, that was the only time I could get it done. But the great thing about that was before I did anything else, before I showered for the day, I got my work done. It was over. I got an hour in, and then I showered, and then I was done. And so you have to just figure out a time and say, this is the time that I do this.
Yeah.
Also, you have an iPad, right? You've got some ways that you are not necessarily like avoiding the loved ones in your life. You don't have to like not be around your husband.
Yeah.
Because you can literally work with him. So if he wants to play video games, guess what? He gets to play a one-player game by himself and not feel guilty because you're getting your work done.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, then you can reward yourself. Then you hit the gym. Then you go eat the ice cream. Then you go do whatever the thing is that you would normally do, including cleaning your house and sharpening all the pencils in your house and clipping your fingernails and doing all of the things that all of a sudden feel super important that I have to do right now. That comes after because it's a non-negotiable because you have a shift.
Yeah.
You're a professional.
And I want to chime in on this too. It's like when I was in school, about where you're at, I worked full time. I was in a BFA program, so I was working 40 hours a week and then going to school full time. And then I'd sleep about 3 or 4 hours a night.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was freelancing and hunting clients and building my portfolio. And when I left school, I was making a living as an artist.
Yeah.
Period. Like I had no lull. I had no like dull period afterwards where I was like, why did I major in art? I was already making money doing art.
Yeah.
But that doesn't just come. It doesn't get handed to you. And it doesn't always come if you work really hard and you only sleep 3 hours. I don't recommend it.
No,
but
I don't think I could.
Point is, but my point is you got to prioritize it because there are people out there sleeping 3 hours. There are plenty of people who really want to draw for a living, and design for a living or be art directors for a living, whatever it is,
Yeah.
There's plenty of competition. So if competition motivates you, just know like you're in a competition right now with every student in America, who's about to finish an art degree. Right.
Yeah. So
that's competition right there. The thing that Corey was just describing, is dead on in the sense of like, it's just reframing it. You need to make your art time essential and important, just like working out. Like when you started doing the gym, was it easy like to make that window?
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then every time before you go to the gym, do you have like that moment of like, well, but I really don't have time. And then you kind of have to overcome that and show up.
Yeah.
It's no different with art. In fact, it's more difficult with art, right? Because at least with the gym, within a couple months, there's very measurable results that you can see, right? So you're like, oh, I'm feeling healthier. I see a little muscle. This is good, right? With art, it's a little bit slower of growth and a slower return, but it's the same exact thing. You literally have to force yourself to do it. It's not a like waiting for the winds to motivate you or inspire you. It's like you show up and then inspiration comes.
Yeah.
Or if it's not a goal, like if art's not the thing, then just that's fine. I don't know if that makes sense because it's like if art's not the thing, then why show up?
Right.
So let me ask you this. I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a guess. So for me, my competition is now, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable saying this out loud on the internet, but it works for me. So my competition is I want to produce at such a high quality and so much work that when people talk to me in person about it, there's awe. I want to see like the amazement in their eyes at how I'm able to do the amount of work that I do.
Yeah.
That's my competition. That's my gold medal. I'm not trying to beat anyone in particular.
Yeah.
But when I bump into people in the grocery store, I want them to be like, I have no idea how you're doing this.
Yeah.
That's actually what motivates me. So what I'm wondering is, how do you feel, or how did you feel when the people in 462 saw you producing more than groups of them were producing?
Oh,
How did that make you?
knowing.
Oh, wait, we muted you. Hold on, come back. Your mic is not connected. So
Am I back?
we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So knowing that I knew that felt good, but hearing it felt weird. Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally does, because you feel
Yeah.
people face to face, and it's hard to take a
And I'm
compliment.
like, oh,
Yeah.
thank you. But like knowing that there was like this implication that, yeah, like I had done more, just like knowing that felt good.
Mhm.
Not necessarily having people be like still when people are like, oh yeah, she's good. I'm like, oh, thanks. Like, this is weird. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So there's a couple things you've touched on. Like one is that's a good motivator. So this gets into War of Art stuff, which
Oh,
is,
I've read
by the
it,
way,
so-
Corey and I, all we're gonna do is rehash War of Art
Yeah.
because it's a lot of it's the same thing. But so what you're gonna experience, right, is like the second you make that window, everyone, even the closest people in your life, are gonna interfere with that window
Right.
instantly. It's a no questions asked. Like that's gonna be the second that your friend comes up to you and goes, let's play video games, or let's
Right.
like hit the gym, or let's go out and relax. And like it'll be people who haven't contacted you in like a year will start calling. Like it's like it's uncanny how quickly that happens.
Right.
So you have to make that window of time, like whether it's like you can find it in the morning, or if it's going to be at night before the gym, or maybe it's after the gym. Like you hit the gym, you get that little boost of energy, and then you take that energy home, like right to the page. But whatever that window is, you have to like protect it and make it sacred, because everything's going to try to interfere with it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is, like, if you do that, you're going to have output, and then you're going to have that self-fulfilling return where you have art, and you will get into that space where, I constantly have that conversation with plenty of people who are like, you work a full-time job, you have a kid, how do you have a band, have like create graphic novels, like, do freelance work, all of that. Like they'll be kind of not able to figure it out, and usually they'll justify it by being like, well, you're lucky, I don't, if I had, and usually it's kind of an excuse of their own, because they feel challenged by the fact that they're not chasing that thing they're called to do. So I mean, it kind of comes down to like how much you believe that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
Because if you really want what you're describing, you have to treat it as sacredly as if, like, why do you go to the gym, right? For health,
Right.
For like price, self-image.
Yeah.
There's a couple reasons, right? But you have solid reasons, and those will be your reasons you rely on when you have that like resistance going to the gym, because you'll be like, yeah, but when I do this, I have more energy, I feel better about myself, like, right?
Yeah, totally.
All of that, like, that needs to be art too.
Yeah.
If art's going to be the thing, because art is a tough career, and it's not a career that like happens quick for most people. It does for some, but it's definitely one of those things where the output and consistency and showing up, actually, that's not that different than any career, really. Showing up is like 90% of most jobs.
Yeah.
If you're not showing up to your table, it's going to be really hard the further you get. But if you build that habit, like if you add things to your plate, but you still have that sacred time, you'll have learned to like put up that protective wall of that time. Like that time needs to happen. And if you make that time as vital, like Corey was saying, like that becomes the thing. It's like eating.
Yeah.
You can't not eat, right? If you make it like that, there's no way you won't have output.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Totally random. But by the way, we also like love having these conversations because we've easily been in your shoes. Like I think we've all had like moments like that.
Have you guys read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No, but that
No.
sounds awesome. What is it?
So, I mean, I'm obviously the one that like needs to work on it, but like she said, your craft or whatever, her analogy was kind of weird. But she was like, it should be like a secret lover. Like that you'll make weird moments in time for them and you're like excited to see them. And
100%.
yeah, it's a good book. It's a really good book, but she has like this brilliant TED talk about like muses and why you shouldn't like hate yourself as an artist and stuff. And like it's basically an expounded version of like that TED talk, but it's super good. It's a super good read. You guys should read it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I want to check it out.
Yeah.
I think like the thing I just keep in mind, like tying into what you're talking about reading, is like the idea of like it just comes down to what you feel called to do, right?
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people I also know from art school who like ended up managing restaurants and that's what they loved. And they're like, yeah, art was just a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really a thing like to think about, because honestly, I think that tends to deal, that's why Corey and I like usually whenever we have this kind of conversation with people, it's like we ask like what their goal is.
Yeah.
It's like your goal's not art, like cool. But if your goal is like you described, it's like the pathway there, how's that going to get achieved if you don't have a portfolio?
Yeah.
And you have a portfolio, but it's like a temporary portfolio where you were building a style and you're getting there.
Yeah.
And then it halts and it comes in spurts, right? It's kind of like once again, it's like the person who like every New Year's is like, I'm going to hit the gym this year. And then you show up 3 times and your membership is costing you more and you never show up, right? It's totally like that. It's like the only way you get results is by showing up, and showing up also is what allows for the muse to happen, because there's days where you just aren't going to feel it. And if you wait to feel it, that wait, I mean, Corey and I think both been in points in our life where that wait can be years. It doesn't just like pause like for a week.
Yeah.
That to me is a big motivator. For me, like one thing that keeps me always carving away at my comics is I know what happens if I take a day off. A day off for me becomes a year off very quickly. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so tell me.
I've met plenty of artists, and that's one commonality is they all struggle with it, but there are those who show up, right? And then those who don't. And that's kind of the big differentiating factor is like the people who show up consistently tend to have careers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've thrown a ton at you.
Yeah, we have. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm curious on what are you thinking? We have Tim asking how old you are.
I'm 24.
24. You had to think about that.
I think I'm 24.
You're not really old enough to have to think about
I know.
Just kidding. Okay, so you're 24.
Yeah.
Given everything that we've said, here's something that most people that we do this with have not experienced, is you have listened to every lecture that I give in a semester like 12 times.
Yes.
And so you've heard all of this. Like we probably haven't said anything new, right?
I mean, you've reminded me of things.
Okay.
You've definitely like, oh yeah, that I forgot about that. Yeah.
All right.
So good things have happened. Don't worry.
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to get you to justify me or whatever. I'm trying to say, I don't think we've really hit on it yet because you already understand all of this stuff. So I'd like to try an activity. This is something that I've started to do. I want you to tell me, let's figure out what you're scared of that is stopping you from doing this. So in the, like, what is the worst thing that you think could happen?
I mean, okay. There's a couple worse things that could happen. I think the
Okay.
worst thing could be I try and nobody cares for a really long time and I can't make anybody care about what
Okay.
I've made, or
Right.
at least not enough numbers to where it's profitable, right? Like my mom loves me, but I need more than that, right?
Yeah.
Or this is just something that like I've been thinking about as we've been talking. It's not something that's scary, but it's something that I could see happening that I don't want to happen, is that I slack off and I just keep my job and I move up in hours and life chugs along and it never happens. The freelance stuff never happens and I won't care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're worried about maybe becoming complacent?
Yeah, and that I'll be like, yeah, it never happened, but like life's good, you know, and like I don't know. When I don't know, when you're young, you have like a lot of fire, and as I'm like getting into just normal life, I can feel the fire just like getting smaller, you
Yeah.
know, and just feeling like, yeah, life is life and da da da, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
So like when you're 17 to 22, I
so
feel like
passionate.
I feel like you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
You're going to take on the world. Everything is a fight. Like I can fight and win anything, you know?
Hmm.
And so it's not, I mean, to those of us that are approaching or passing 40, 50, whatever, 24 seems like really young, but 24 is an interesting age because
Yeah.
you are transitioning out of that invincibility. You're transitioning out of
Yeah.
that fire because neurologically, what's happening to your brain right now is you are transitioning from a stage of binary thinking where everything is black and white. And when everything is black and white, it's really easy to see evil and it's really easy to see good, right?
Hmm.
You're transitioning into a stage where your brain is now beginning to understand ambiguity and see nuance in life. And so that can often take the fire out because you're not slaying dragons anymore. There aren't dragons. There's good people that occasionally do weird, evil things. There's evil people that sometimes do good things. There's I don't exactly know who to vote for because not everybody is perfect and not everybody
Yeah.
really aligns, but I got to kind of figure out where, like, you're transitioning into a stage of nuance and ambiguity. And I think one of the hardest things to learn to do in this life, and some people never figure it out, is how to take initiative in the midst of ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to, and you know this, you have to commit and move forward, right? That's why we're here. That's why you wanted to be on this show.
Yeah.
When I was like, you should come on the show, you got kind of excited, right?
Also scared.
Yeah, which is fine. Which is fine. Josh is much nicer than I am, and you've seen me teach, so you know that my meanness
Yeah.
is actually just a facade.
Yes.
But the thing is, the challenge in that is if I say that to a 17-year-old, right? I say, you've got to just commit to something and move forward. They're like, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's fight something. Let's do it. Because everything is black and white. It's really easy to kill stuff when it's black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that things are a little bit more ambiguous, you're married now, right?
Yeah.
You got a job, you got different things. The world is gray,
Mm-hmm.
and there's different shades of gray. You still have to commit and move forward, knowing that there's no real way to know whether you're doing the right thing or not.
Yeah.
You just feel like you might be doing the right thing. And that's the best that you're going to get for the rest of your life is that I think this is what I should be doing. That's it. There's no certainty anymore. The certainty in your brain will end within a year. You will never be certain about anything ever again.
Yeah. I mean, I already feel that happening. Like,
right.
That's why that alternate reality of me just having a normal job and going about my day, like, that doesn't sound terrible, you know? I mean, I'd still live my life, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah.
So, but if that's one of your fears, right, that's actually a really good thing to, so it's weird, but like around the same age was for me when comics clicked. I loved comics, and I was kind of considered myself as somebody who'd be a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And I got to about your age when I realized like I've never really finished or made a comic, so I don't really have the right to call myself a cartoonist. And then I saw myself in this path where I could just never make a comic, which for me was like that future wasn't acceptable to present me, because that's why I went into art, right? So that would be kind of absurd. But that's where I also realized this really important thing, which I'm sure Corey's talked about, but it's the fact that like there's no point in your art career where you're going to walk into a room and people are going to shake your hand and go, "Welcome to being a professional artist. You did all the right steps." And like open the door to an industry and be like, "You found the secret code. Like, good, congratulations." It's more.
I want to interrupt and say I love the voice that you did through the whole thing.
Thank you.
Carry on.
But I think I had this weird, absurd idea that like at some point you click and you get anatomy down well enough, and you get like you learn these skills, and then you'd be granted access to this like secret industry by some person at the top who would just crack it open for you, and then you're in the money. And that doesn't really exist. Like the primary gatekeeper in art is the artist themselves. And that's hard for artists to understand. It's like, and for you, that future, if it's a big fear, right? That means you're still in touch with this thing you feel called to do. And I think as long as you feel that, like Corey was saying, like committing to it's really important, especially amid ambiguity, because that's when it counts. You'll notice like hero's journey stories, nobody's high-fiving a hero where the pathway's laid out clearly before them and they do all the right steps. That's a really boring story. What we like is a story where a hero embarks on a journey, and then they hit all these obstacles that they couldn't have planned on, and they overcome those obstacles and stick to the goal or find a better goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically your journey, right? It's like you are at this pathway where it's like it's not so certain. Life gets way more complicated, and it never simplifies. That's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
But you're at a really good age to where if you act now, it's a fascinating time where like if you put in the work now, you could end up in a very good spot, and you could very well achieve your dream.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like but you can't get to a destination without taking the steps. And if you're sitting and you're considering taking the steps, you might miss it while a bunch of other people are going down that same path and just hitting it,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was working at Soapbox, I don't remember if you remember this guy. He had like stickers and he was selling them, and he had this whole company basically. I was so jealous of him. I remember because he's my age and he had already been in the game basically for a while. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You remember him? He was fulfilling orders and like drawing on the back of the packaging before he sent it out, and he had like all these characters, and I just remember being so jealous of him. Yeah. Like that he was I don't know how old he was, but he couldn't have been that far from my age, right?
Yeah.
And that was years ago, where he was like he was at it already, and I didn't even know that I was capable of being at it already until I saw somebody else my age already doing it.
Yeah.
So what do I say about that realization of that was years ago?
Oh, if you see another person who's in your spot doing the same or doing something that you thought you couldn't do, then suddenly you think you can do it, and then you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it immediately becomes possible in your mind. there's a reason that I asked you about the fear.
Yeah.
And I want you to take this seriously.
Okay.
I think you should cross stitch it on a pillow. I think you should
I
spray
can
paint it on your
cross-stitch.
wall. Yeah, whatever it is. You need to come up with something visible that somehow encapsulates that fear. And I want you to look at it all the time, because that is a very real reality that one of two things is going to happen. One, nobody's going to care about your work. That's possible, right?
Yeah.
And two, that you just never make anything and you become complacent, and that art was just something you did for a couple years when you were young.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you look up and you're 50 and you haven't drawn anything in 20 years.
Yeah.
Those are both very possible. The first one seems like it's outside of your control, because what if I make something and nobody likes it?
Yeah.
I will tell you this, that nobody will take your work seriously until you take your work seriously.
Yeah.
Right? No one will care about your work until you care about your work.
And also just no one I've met, even like guys who've won Caldecots, is not hustling and shamelessly self-promoting. So if you're shamelessly self-promoting, welcome to the club. Like,
Yeah, right.
you're already doing what most artists do. I mean,
Right.
it's part of the gig. So
Yeah.
when you have to stand on a mountaintop and go, look at my painting, look at my drawing, you're joining plenty of extremely talented artists doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why I showed up too. I was like, I can't say no to stuff. I need to show up to stuff, because if I do,
good.
People know who I am, and they don't if I don't.
And it was a challenge. You need to find a fight.
Yeah.
You need to find a fight, because you are driven by that. But I think as things shifted, you lost your fight. And here's the key that I don't think you've never done it, except for you've done it one time. You need to stop doing online competitions, and you need to start producing products.
Yeah.
Right? You need a project. Like, what did you do? You illustrated an entire book in a month.
Yeah.
Where did that go? It went on Instagram, and it went on your website, and then what?
Some of the ones that I liked, I put on my Etsy store.
Okay.
But not all of them, because so I have like print on demand stuff figured out, like I know who I do it with and stuff.
Right.
If people would buy them.
Okay.
But can't do books. Not yet. At least not with them. But I can do prints, and I can do them any size, and I can do them multiple types of paper and whatever. And so I was like, I'll start there. But yeah, I figured.
So as a quasi introvert,
yeah,
you did all the behind the scenes work. Did you tell anybody about it?
Like about the project? I mean, like I posted every day.
Shout it from the rooftops and say, it's for sale. Come and get it. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to promote it. I'm going to create a bunch of content that is adding value. I'm going to explain things. I'm going to do time-lapse videos. And then at the end of that, I'm going to have a link to where you should go to buy this thing. Or did you put it up and then quietly go make some more stuff and hope that people know about it?
A little bit of, yeah. I mean, I talked about how I had a new store up and stuff, and I stocked it, but I did that once, and then I left it alone. So,
Yep. Yeah. I experienced the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I have recently made a conscious decision to actively promote my work. So I share my work often, and I share my process a lot, but I've never until recently done stuff like this.
Right.
This is the result of me deciding I don't care what people think of me.
Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of that inner critic in my voice. And I'm not going to be super annoying and like used car salesman or whatever, but like when I win an award, I'm not going to just say, oh, I don't really want to like say that online because then I'll feel like I'm bragging.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put myself out there. 88 film festivals. I submitted to 88 film festivals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's recent for me, and I spent more than 2 decades not drawing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Josh.
Also, here's the other thing. Like, so you described a few things that are like action plans,
right?
Like that you may not even be aware of. Like, so you like cards, right?
Yeah.
Have you emailed art directors of card companies?
No, it's too scary. I haven't done
Why?
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fascinating.
Wait. So that's a good starting point.
Okay.
Though. Like, why? Is it because you don't have a full enough portfolio? Because, right, I'm just saying, like, a path that you can go down. If it's because you don't have a full enough portfolio, you need to get going on your portfolio so you can submit, right? Is it that you're nervous about their response? Well, the best illustrators and designers in the world get rejections. So that's your worst case scenario, is you're joining the club of professional artists, right? Yeah, like there's a couple realities, and that's why I think what Corey's talking about is brilliant. Like, print up your feared future, put it on your mirror in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Because the
and
action,
if every day, fight it.
That action, literally, of I'm going to make a portfolio until I get to the point where I feel confident in my portfolio enough to send it out.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to send it out, and I'm going to send it to board game companies, and I'm going to send it to card game companies, and I'm going to knock on that door. And if that door doesn't break down, I'll kickstart my own card game, and I'll just come in through the roof. And if the roof's closed, I'll come in through the side hatch. Like, and this is an interesting similarity with most very successful artists. It is this story of like, and you'll see it as a narrative anytime you see people who are fairly successful as show creators or writers or artists. There's this common thread of like not taking no for an answer, like knocking on the door. If the door is closed, you check if there's an open window. If the open window is closed, you know, if everything's closed, you get a sledgehammer and you just start chipping away until there's a crack and you can actually get through. And like, that's the thing, is like, that's the competition.
Yeah.
Is like, if you want to do cards, are you waiting for someone to approach you? Like, do cards, like approach them, like hunt it. Like, you're a hunter, your portfolio is your ammunition, right? Yeah. A deer's not just going to come and like lay down and be dead for you. Like, if you're hunting for deer, you have to go to where the deer are. You have to find it, and you have to, you know, have the right ammo, and it is a little bit of luck, but you're, you know, generally if you're hunting for food, it's not going to walk itself up to you, right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so build that hunger, you know. You know, those are beautiful pieces. So it's like, you know, that also could be a thing. Like, why not kickstart it and run a card set?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I feel like a lot of things also, it's just like something I tell myself is like, I'm not an art student, I'm a communication student. And so when I don't know how to do something that I just assume they taught you, or at least mentioned in art school, like the secret of sending your portfolio to an art director, didn't hear about that until I got on like art Twitter, you know?
Yeah. Right.
And so like, I don't know, like my brain told me that's for art students. And so, and you don't know how to do that anyways, and you don't like doing things you don't know how to do. So, you know, and
well, here's the secret. Yeah. Like, and this was the thing that cracked it for me with comics, was like, I was waiting for like that kind of magic person will give me an entry in or whatever.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me that like, no one knows how to make comics until they make comics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you don't get good at comics until you've actually made a few. And so I was realizing like, that's the trick. Like, I had a bunch of professors who were great at art and couldn't make comics because they've never made comics. And I was like, oh, I'm like waiting for these people to like give me an intro, and they don't know what they're doing either. And then it dawned on me, like, nobody on their first comic, no matter how much education they have, knows how to make a comic. Like, it's literally something you have to do to figure out. That's completely approaching art directors, hustling
Yeah.
for work, getting professional work. There's no right or wrong way, and you'll learn the wrong ways really quick. You'll get an angry response from an art director who frankly won't remember you in a year because they're dealing with a bunch of submissions, and then you can submit again.
Yeah.
As long as you're not a jerk. I mean, that's a good rule, is don't be
Yeah.
a jerk. But yeah, I mean, like, you don't have to wait for permission, and literally no art director, especially for freelance, is going to ask you for your degree,
Right.
And then communications, the fact that you majored in that gives you a huge advantage because most art majors can't communicate.
Yeah.
And guess what you have to do when you're reaching out for work? You have to communicate, right?
Yeah.
You have to sell yourself. You're the product that you're doing communication for.
Yeah. Well, and I guess like I love that I have the communications degree. Like, you're so right that it's really beneficial, and I feel like it's gotten me so far. But I totally tell myself, like, that's something, this is something you weren't taught, or this is some sort of secret potion that they gave the other kids. They didn't give it to you.
Now you've listened to me for hours, hundreds of hours of me talking.
I have.
What do I say about that? Where's that voice coming from? Where's that message?
It's coming from a place that, I don't know, like, it's coming from within, not from anything real, but also that, like, you can literally just look up answers to stuff or ask questions or whatever until you figure out what to do.
And in addition to that, you're gatekeeping yourself.
Yeah.
You just said it. There's no real gatekeeper that's saying, as a communication student, you're not allowed to do this. So you decided that. Do you know who is doing that to you?
Me.
It's that future horrible fear version of you that doesn't make art. We need to name it. Whatever like the evil darkest timeline version of Emily is.
Becky. I'm just kidding. It just seems like a mean name.
Yeah. So like that is who's doing that to you. No one
Shadow
else.
Emily.
Yeah, Shadow Emily that's from here on out. Shadow Emily is the Emily that stops doing art. That's the fear, right? Is that you just give it up. Okay. And so when you hear something that's like, you're not allowed to do that because you're a comm student, that is Shadow Emily saying, I just want to play video games for the rest of my life and never accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Right? And
another
convincing you.
Yeah. And another red flag of that voice is like, basically before submitting anything anywhere, like before you send out a query email, before you set up a Kickstarter, before you sell a print, right? You're going to have that voice that's like, no one cares, right? What if I get rejected? What if this happens? And it's the what ifs, right?
Right.
Some of that's instinctual and it's good, right? Because if you're at like a cliff's edge and you're a little cautious, it's not a bad thing. That's a good instinct, right? Because what if I fall? Probably good, right?
Yeah.
But then there's irrational versions of instinct that are self-protective, right? But aren't beneficial. And those are scenarios where usually the end result isn't like, then I die, right? It's like, what happens if you submit, let's say you send out your, portfolio. And like, once again, it's a logical process, because if you don't feel like you have the portfolio to send out, that's step one, right? Get that portfolio. There's a distance between you and that portfolio, and it's just making windows of time, right?
Yeah.
But once you have that portfolio, before you send out, you're not going to feel confident. No one does.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a difference of
fully,
if you listen to that dark future self and believe that's your end result, right? Like if you listen to that dark future self, you have a perfect pathway to end up exactly there.
Yeah.
But if you just override it and go, you know what, like, and usually that overriding happens with hope, right? You send it out, and worst case scenario, you get that rejection and you join the club of people who got rejected. Those things that Corey just showed you, like those trophies, those came along with a whole slew of rejections. Like, it's part of the process. You don't always get the 100% win.
Yeah.
But there's a sure way to not win, which is just not compete.
Yeah.
But you're not going to play professionally, like you're not going to be in the game if you're not competing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Anyhow, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like, name the dark future self. And honestly, it's helpful for people who've been in the game for a while, because that self comes back. Like, those fears don't just disappear. They'll rear their ugly head.
Yeah.
In the process of art all the time,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
totally rambling.
No, I think we're good. We're approaching 90 minutes.
Ooh.
And so I want to get to some real quick. We're going to take about 5 or 10 minutes to do this and just say, all right, action plans. Now, before I ask you this question, I want to tell you that I have over the years studied motivation and inspiration to try to figure out how drive works. And so I want to give you a couple things that I've learned, and then I'm going to ask you to commit to publicly an action plan that you will begin implementing tomorrow. Because
Okay.
I would normally say today, except it's like really late. So let me just read you a message that I sent to someone who had a similar thing.
Okay.
There are a few key things. 1, keep it simple. 2, keep it measurable. 3, find someone who is like-minded and schedule check-ins with them. 4, don't try to improve in a vacuum. You've got to find things that you love, or at least things that are interesting to you, and do those in addition to the more chore-like things, right? Mm-hmm. That 4th one means, like, if you've got to figure out anatomy, make sure you're also doing things that you enjoy doing while you're doing that stuff, so it doesn't become a chore. Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive and found that drive is made up of 4 things: autonomy, self-mastery, and purpose. In other words, if you feel that you have choice and agency while you're seeing improvement in something that you find important to you, then you'll feel motivated. And then, just as a closing statement, I said also read The War of Art. So read The War of Art again, because it only takes 3 hours.
Yeah.
In that book, right?
Yeah.
But right now, I want you to figure out what is your game plan, where you are public, you're committed, you carve out time, you have an ally of some kind, and you kind of move forward with that idea of, this is a non-negotiable. So what, because you said in plans before we had this discussion, you said your plan was to draw, which I think is a good start.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge is that it is non-specific. And so there's no way to measure that, right? If you
say, is that like doodle in a sketchbook for 5 minutes, or is that create like finished illustrations, right?
Yeah.
You put a single line down on a napkin and you've achieved that goal, because it's not a goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So either time or accomplishment, right? So think of either like the sticker stint, okay, or the 100 Days of Making Comics. Both of those are 2 different ways to tackle this. One is, no matter what happens, come hell or high water, 30 minutes a day of making comics. The other one is, no matter what happens, non-negotiable, I finish a sticker every day, right? So time or accomplishment, one of those 2 metrics. So given those things, let's brainstorm real quick for like 5 minutes. What are some actions that you could take? What are some plans that you could do? And how do you build around that a system that continues to do it?
So like the big thing that I feel like I really need right now is a backlog of content, so that I don't feel pressure to constantly making something and then give it to Instagram 20 minutes later. So like creating content for that is what I really need to do. So when I say drawing, like just working on those things, like I'm in the middle of all of those illustrations, and so getting all of those done, and then and then adding more stuff to it. So, when I'm done with that, I'll start up a new thing and I'll have it all backlogged and make a content calendar so that I know when I'm putting stuff up or it's already scheduled. And then when stuff happens spontaneously, it gets squished in there, or maybe the backlog continues to push a little bit farther back, and then I can spread out my content more and post consistently, because that's what I do not do right now. Like, once I finish something, then I post it, and that still can take a long time. So, yeah.
I
think
that. So how
can
you marry that with something more actionable than just Instagram? Because that touches one thing, but the neat thing is, right, if you're making Instagram content, you can also be making something that you can be directing people to as you build your Instagram. Meaning, like, you could end up with like a dead Instagram with a ton of followers, right? Or you could end up with an Instagram with followers that's rerouting somewhere that might actually get you closer to that end goal.
Yeah. So,
right?
Yeah. And so you guys were talking about like pushing that content into self-promotion, which I haven't really, I know I thought about it, but not in the way that you guys explained it, of just making everything into self-promotion content. And so, I mean, I have the link to my store in my Instagram, but actually pushing it to the Instagram or pushing it to the store is something that I don't really like. I don't know. I don't do that right now. So
TJ's onto something too, right? Like, that's still vague in the sense of content.
It is.
I mean, content like could be like me saying, "Oh my gosh, I had such a good day" on a video for 5 seconds, and there's content, right?
Right. So specific Instagram posts, totally written out, hashtags and everything. And let's say, because I haven't thought about this, but let's say like 2 months content calendar all figured out, and then I'm always 2 months ahead.
Okay, and what does 2 months look like specifically in numbers? Is that every day or twice a week or what?
Twice a week. And
okay,
then
so you're looking at 16 pieces.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad.
No,
you've literally proven that you can do that in 16 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so how soon are you gonna have 16 pieces done?
Well, now that I'm realizing it's not that much. I mean, I was planning on having the entire content calendar done as like my semester project. So it'd be sooner than that.
Okay.
What month is it? February? So what comes after February? The month after that? March. Like March 15th, let's say. Okay, that's plenty of time, right?
March 15th, that gives you 4 days to produce one illustration for every illustration that you're doing, which is fine. Because what I really want you to do is I want you to do that. I also want you to have a larger project. So I want you to be concurrently working on little pieces of content. That's helpful in the social media game, right? We've got lots of really cool comments from Timothy and the Dream Syndicate and TJ. You should go read this chat after this. So that's going to help trigger the algorithm is little pieces of content consistently.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? But what your potential audience cares about is that you have a big project. And a big project for me is a 2.5 minute animated short, or a 12-page comic or whatever, right? It's something that's going to take you 6 months of consistent effort. Like, what could you produce if you put in about 200 to 300 hours? I'm not talking about like whether that's going to take you a year or whether that's going to take you, but within like 200 to 300 hours, what would you be interested in making that would be significant?
A game.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that's like that big.
Okay. here's something fascinating about that, right? If it's a game, right? What's a game that can be broken down into little actionable chunks that you could use, crossing with your social media content, right? Group it together.
Yeah.
So it's not separated and could actually be an end product that you could then actually put out.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like what we talk about in like class with like, you know, you work on pieces, you show the plan, you show what you're going to do, you show what the goal looks like and carry everybody through that process. Right.
So that's the social media content of that. What Josh is asking is for Josh, he's doing, what are you at? 70 pages, Josh?
What's up?
For your comic?
Oh, like 106 or something.
Okay. So over 100 pages in this comic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to say, I'm going to do a 100-page comic, that's a ridiculously daunting thing.
That would be probably a bad goal for you.
And that's not, it's not achievable. You can't just like show up one day and be like, I'm going to make 100 pages today. Right. But what is achievable is, and Josh does this, I'm going to try to do a panel a day. That's typically what I've seen him do is I'm going to try to pencil a panel a day or ink a panel a day. And so what we're asking is card game that's going to take you 300 hours, right? It's going to look amazing. It's going to be fun. It's going to fund for $10,000 on Kickstarter, right? There's going to be a couple hundred people that want it. Okay, that's what's going to happen down the road. Whether that's 4 months down the road or a year down the road, you're going to get 300 hours into this thing to that goal, right? That's what you're shooting for.
Mm-hmm.
What's the measurable unit that you can produce in a day?
Oh, I mean, probably time, for me, if I spent the time and it doesn't feel like anything happened because I'm critical or whatever, like I am definitely a fan of not beating myself up for not feeling like I didn't produce anything, but at least knowing that I tried that day and I tried for this amount of time. So I feel like, and that's what I do now, or what I try to do now. And like, I took your advice that you gave me last week of like, just draw a half hour a day. Makes me feel a lot better about stressing out about not drawing because now I'm drawing. That's and good. That if I feel like it was all really bad or something like that, or I'm just down on myself, it doesn't matter because I put in a half hour and there's still tomorrow. So
So you do a half hour a day on a card. How long roughly do you think it would take you to do like a single card, just one face? Like the other faces are fairly easy, right? You're using repeated assets and design and stuff. But like the illustrated face, like how long would that take you?
I mean, probably like 3 to 5 hours worth of illustration work. It really depends on what it is and how familiar I am with it, because I'm still in the phase where I know what I can do, and whenever it goes outside of that realm, I probably never tried drawing that before. So it kind of depends on what's the subject.
So at 30 minutes a day, and I think you could probably do an hour, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say an hour because it's an easier unit. You're looking at a card a week minimum. Right. I want to address this really quick. Just want to say that game design's its own thing, and I have friends that develop board games for the better part of a year, and they're pros.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I think that your first game that you produce is going to be wildly successful and that I'm discounting the work of other people, but I'm saying that you need to fight that as if that's going to happen, because it could.
Yeah.
It is possible. So I don't want you to go into this saying, is my first game or whatever. Like when I do an animation, when I do a comic, when I do an illustration, my instinct is to protect myself and give myself excuses for it to not be as good as it could be. And I say, and I used to do this. well, I don't care if anybody cares about this because I'm making it for me or whatever. Like, I care if people care about it. Like, I
Yeah.
want everybody to care about it, right? I want it to make $1 million, right? And when I show up now, I show up to make the best thing that anyone has ever seen. And I fail every time, right?
Mhm.
Because that's not possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I show up to do. And I work as hard as I possibly can to get that done. And so there's two things that are kind of conflicting. One is, if I'm aiming for perfection, I will never finish it. And I will die having never finished anything. So I
Yeah.
don't want perfection.
Yeah.
But if I'm aiming for only speed and completion, it's going to be a hot pile of garbage.
Yeah, and you're
so-
on a really fast road to success in your own goal, but total mediocrity, right?
Right.
So somewhere in the middle, and everybody's different, you're
Mhm.
going to find a spot where you need to complete work, but you are fully expecting it. When Shadow Emily comes into your mind and tells you, like, nobody's going to care about this, and you're wasting your time, and like you've got all these cool achievements that you could get in The Witcher or something, right? I'm not sure what games you're playing right now.
I don't play The Witcher.
Okay, I've never played it.
Play Halo.
All right, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, so like you could get a completion achievement by getting like all of these like random things, right? When Shadow Emily comes in and says that, you need to say, I am going to make the best game that anyone has ever seen. That is my goal, right? And you knowing that you're going to fail at that, but aiming for that means that you're going to make an incredible game. And the gameplay may suck, but it's going to look beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So
and in doing that, then you're going to figure out, like, holy crap, I now know that I need to not do this and I need to do this. And so the second game that you make, the third game that you make, the fourth game that you make, the fifth game that you make are going to get better and better and better each time.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's a couple people kind of chiming in, because to me, my thought is, you love games, you love cards, just do a classic deck, like as a starter.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. You're just making a poker deck, 52 cards, right?
Yeah.
So think about this. Is one a week going to be enough? That's 52 weeks.
No, because I mean,
there's 4 weeks in a month.
If you've made the character ones, like the royalty cards, those all take more time, right? But all of the numbers, I mean, just change the number, So yeah, I mean, and that's something that I always thought in my head, I'm going to start out with just a deck of cards because I don't know how to make a game, and I'm not necessarily, I don't know how crazy I am about like building a game. That is something that to me definitely feels out of my league creatively right now, but illustrating them, heck yes, like I'm down. And so yeah,
make one that you're going to put in the market that'll function as Instagram posts, right?
Yeah.
You've already had a little experience with it. You've dipped your hand in it, right?
Yeah.
With what the examples that Corey's showing so nicely on the screen.
Yeah.
So it's like that can cross-function as Instagram posts. If you're super into Greek mythology, guess what? There's a whole world of people who are.
Yeah.
That would be a great theme on a deck.
Yeah, that would. This stuff that you're showing right now is horrible.
Sorry.
Demand that you show something else.
I want to show something else.
I hate that project.
It's brilliant.
Take it off your website.
Yeah. It's like I'm happy with the work. I hate half the stuff that I made.
But that's the thing. So make more stuff.
Yeah, totally.
You're not going to be happy with more of the stuff till you make enough content to take out all the stuff you're unhappy with.
Yeah, totally.
So like you do your Greek mythology theme. Do it as a card deck, right?
Yeah.
Card deck illustrations. Then you basically are cross content, which is that window you want, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're building that Instagram, you have a place to direct people.
Yeah.
So you're doing marketing where you should be, because this from communications, right? You don't want to ask people to make an action point.
Yeah.
A customer to make an action point that doesn't have a return.
Yeah.
Right. So, because that's actually lost potential in a client. Like a client's only going to make like 1 or 2 actions based on an ad or a conversation. And so if you're misdirecting them and all they're doing is hit like or subscribe, right? There's no return.
Yeah, totally.
If you're doing that and you have a deck that you're inevitably going to market, then you actually have a product, right? And when you have a product, you're one step closer to that vision of this future where you're creating products that people are buying that are your own.
Yeah,
that future only happens when you actually start doing it. And that might mean like any starting business, right? Like it might mean you kickstart it and no one funds it, right?
Right. Yeah.
It might mean there's a failure along the way, but at least that failure gets you a step closer to success. Whereas like, I think it doesn't have to be that particular thing. But what I'm saying is if you have something that's that specific, you have an end goal that's going to give you the fire to get through it. Because that gives you more motive, at least to me in my mind, like that would give me more motivation to stick through it because I have an end goal in mind. Like I need a completed card deck. Right?
Yeah.
That's enough to motivate you to get through the deck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I need Instagram posts at a certain timing, right? So that's enough to motivate you to get it on time. You have a deadline.
Yeah.
Who's going to now? We're missing one core component from what Corey was talking about, which is who's your accountability buddy.
Oh,
yeah.
Which Corey loves that phrase. You should recite it all the time.
I mean, probably.
Oh, we lost your mic again. Come back.
The heck. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that, but
That's okay.
Probably my husband because he's there every day, and yeah. I mean, I would say that he had. What were we gonna say?
I was gonna say.
That's
I was gonna say. I was gonna suggest that, and the reason I suggest that
okay.
is because that forces you to communicate some things really well and intimately that might be very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You need to impress upon him how important it is for him to go to battle with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because my wife did not get it because I didn't take it upon myself to explain it. And as soon as I was vulnerable enough to say, I don't feel good about myself if I'm not doing this stuff. As soon as I did that, then, because she's not an artist, she's a musician, she's a singer, right? So she gets creativity, but in a different way. Now she's the one that's like, hey, shouldn't you hit up the studio? How are you doing? Like, have you made something recently? And when people come to like impress upon me something time-wise, I almost don't even have to say anything because my wife is like, Corey has some commitments. And so he won't be able to do that until after he meets his commitments.
Yeah.
And I know what she means. And they think, oh, that sounds serious. And I totally understand. Right. And so and then we've gotten to the point in our relationship where, we're not asking each other permission because we're equal partners and neither of us is in charge. Yeah. But we will check in with each other. Hey, does this mess you up if I'm doing this? Is this cool if I, whatever? It's a scheduling thing. And so neither of us is going to just be like, all right, I'm hanging out with the girls and I'll see you later. You're in charge of the kids for, the next 6 months or whatever. Right. And so what you need to have is a series of conversations until you both understand what you need him to do to go to battle for you.
Yeah. I mean, and he's great. What were we going to say?
Oh, go ahead.
He's
go ahead.
Great about the gym already. Like that's something that a couple years ago, I'm like, I have to do this. If I don't do this, it will never happen. And there is only forwards or backwards, right? Like I'm either going to progress or I'm going to get chubby. And so he's very like, aren't you going to go to the gym today? Or like, you should go to the gym because I know that you say that you feel better when you go to the gym and you're cranky or something, And so, yeah.
Well, that's where big vision comes into play. Like if you have this end goal in mind,
Yeah.
bring him on board with that. Be like,
Yeah.
this is my end goal. Like I want to create this product. I eventually want to put it out. I want to get people to be into it. And at the same time, I can build my Instagram. And this is how it'll get me closer to that goal that you're talking about, which I'm sure you've shared your dreams, right? For like your own career. And so it's like, you can, like the beauty of like that kind of thing is that's a win-win for both people, right?
Yeah.
Nobody hurts in a relationship if somebody has a solid career. Like that's usually a benefit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and at the point you guys are probably both at in your lives, or at least you're at in your life, like that's a thing you're working towards. So it's like you can bring him on board to like be like, hold me to this. Like every day I need to be working on this. And that's a vulnerable thing to do too, because that means those days you don't want to show up, you're going to hear it,
Yeah.
And that's tough, but that's like that beautiful thing about like, bringing somebody who's going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
So that starts tomorrow.
Okay.
And we will be checking in. We will have a follow-up episode that hopefully isn't 2 hours long.
Yeah.
I love it.
At some point in time, let's schedule it. We're going to expect some significant progress by the end of the semester. So
Okay.
just right before April, we're looking at like the end of March.
Mhm.
Okay.
We're going to check in. Everybody in the chat now knows you exist.
Yeah.
They're going to follow you on social media, and they will know whether you're doing this stuff or not. So you've got some visibility, and you've got some accountability, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and why don't we share where people can find you on social media too, just to put that out there.
Yeah, that's been up. That's been up for a little bit, and then everything kind of is at Guminelly.com. So
everything's Guminelly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, where would you prefer people? I mean, are you're not really doing YouTube stuff?
No, not right now.
So
mostly Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So keep Emily in check. Check in on her so that she knows what's going on. Leave comments.
Yeah.
And go to Guminelly.com and check that stuff out.
Yeah.
Okay. So final thoughts, Emily. Closing.
Excited.
Good. That's awesome. I'm glad.
That's my final thought.
I'm glad that you were brave enough to come on, because it's
Thank you.
yeah, it is massively intimidating to say I'm not doing what I should be doing, and I'm willing to publicly come and talk about it for a couple hours.
Yeah.
That's scary. So
it's nice because, I read all these books, but now I've literally had it in second person, and the character is me. like it's not about somebody else. It's entirely pointed at me. So yeah.
Tim, he's just asking what your husband does.
He is still in school, but he works full time also, and he is studying chemistry. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, Josh, where can we find your stuff?
All right, you can find my stuff at joshuakemble.com. You can read my story about faith and mental illness at quarterlystories.com. And I should be posting a new page by the next time we have an art check. So go check that out.
Cool. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And you can find, oh, by the way, I forgot to say this. This is good news for everyone.
Yeah.
We have figured out a way to get the podcast going again. So there are 2 new episodes up. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, it's on Stitcher, it's on iTunes, it's on Google Play, it's on Spotify, it's in all the places. So go get those things at CoreyKerr.com/48HR. Also, I have a brand new thing that I'm doing where it's at CoreyKerr.com/IMC, which is going to be the Indie-mation conversation So if you are interested in indie animation and how to do that, or if you're one of those illustrators that thinks that animation is too hard, Josh, and that you don't have time for it, this show is for you, because literally next week, myself and Jim Lujan will be showing our process. If you think there's kind of a range between the two of us, between probably overly complicated and really simplistic. And so there's somewhere in that range between Jim and I, you could fit and you could learn how to do this and start making stuff move. And so if you have even
two excellent guys, like very awesome dudes that I highly vouch for. So you guys should go check that out.
So check that out. So lots of good stuff happening. And we'll be back on the 48-hour art check Mondays and Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. And the Indiemation podcast is going to be happening Tuesdays. And then I will nap Thursdays and Fridays and hopefully make stuff. So we'll see you guys in a couple of days. Go make something right now.